They broke you, and you let them. You trusted when you should have calculated. You showed mercy when you should have shown strength. You played by rules that were never designed for your victory. But here's what they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand. Every wound they carved into you was a lesson. Every betrayal was a blueprint. Every moment they made you feel powerless was actually forging something they'll never be able to stop. You see, broken men go two ways. Most stay broken. They carry their scars like chains, whining about fairness, waiting for the world to apologize. But then there's the second type, the ones who realize that the pain wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The ones who understand that when you're shattered completely, you get to rebuild yourself into exactly what you choose to become. And they won't recognize what you've become until it's far too late. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote The Prince not from a place of comfort, but from exile, from betrayal, from watching weaker men hold power while he rotted. He didn't cry about it. He studied it. He mastered it. He became someone those same men would fear to cross. Drop a comment right now. I am the storm they created because that's what you're becoming. Not the victim, not the wounded, the storm itself. Part 2. The Metamorphosis. Let me tell you something about monsters. Society fears them because monsters don't play by the social contract anymore. They don't seek approval. They don't beg for acceptance. They take what they've learned in the darkness and use it without hesitation, without guilt, without the weakness of hoping others will change. You were taught to be good, to be fair, to turn the other cheek. And where did that get you? Stepped on, used, discarded. The people who broke you, they're still out there, living comfortably, never losing sleep over what they did to you. They moved on the moment you stopped being useful. That's the reality. That's the game. And you were playing it with a blindfold on. But here's the shift, the transformation that separates the conquered from the conquerors. You stop trying to be understood by people who lack the capacity to understand power. You stop explaining yourself to those who weaponized your vulnerability. You become fluent in the language they actually speak, the language of consequence, of boundaries enforced through action, of calculated moves that protect your position. This isn't about revenge in the emotional sense. Emotional revenge is weakness. It's reactive. It's still giving them power over you. No, this is about something colder, something permanent. This is about rebuilding yourself into someone so strategically untouchable that they can't even get close enough to hurt you again. You study them now, their patterns, their weaknesses, their predictable moves. You see the game clearly because you've been on the losing side, and losers see things winners are blind to. Machiavelli said it perfectly. Men ought either to be indulged or utterly destroyed because they revenge themselves for slight wrongs, while for grave ones they cannot. You were slightly wounded before. You can't be slightly wounded anymore. Comment this: calculated, not emotional, because that's your new operating system. Part 3. The Rules of Power. Listen carefully. The world runs on power dynamics, not fairness, not karma, not what goes around comes around. That's a comforting lie they sell to keep you passive while they operate by completely different rules. The moment you understand this, truly internalize it, everything changes. You stop being shocked by betrayal. You stop being surprised when loyalty has a price. You stop expecting people to operate with the same moral code you were brainwashed into following. Here's what they don't teach you. Morality is a social construct designed to control the many for the benefit of the few. The people at the top, they don't follow these rules. They create them for you to follow while they maneuver freely. They preach kindness while practicing ruthlessness. They demand transparency while operating in shadows. They shame you for ambition while hoarding every advantage. You were playing checkers. They were playing chess. And they convinced you that even wanting to play chess made you a bad person. That's the trap. That's the mechanism of control, guilt, shame, the fear of being perceived as cold or calculating or Machiavellian. But let me ask you this. Where did being warm and open and trusting get you. Exactly where you are now, burned, used, rebuilt from ashes. So here's the new framework, the operating system of untouchable men. First, trust is earned in tiny increments through demonstrated behavior over time, never given freely. Second, your presence is a privilege that can be revoked instantly without explanation or guilt. Third, you observe everything, reveal nothing, and move in silence until the move is already complete. Fourth, emotion is private fuel. It drives you internally but never shows externally in ways that create vulnerability. Fifth, every relationship is evaluated on what it costs you versus what it returns. Sentiment without strategy is slavery. Sixth, you become valuable, not available. Scarcity creates power, abundance creates exploitation. Seventh, you never explain, justify, or defend your boundaries. You simply enforce them through action. These aren't evil principles, they're reality principles. They're how protected men operate. Comment, I choose power over popularity. Because that choice, that single decision, is where your transformation becomes irreversible. Part 4. The death of your old self. There's a version of you that needs to die. And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean you need to execute that person with the same cold precision a king orders the execution of a traitor. That version of you who apologized for existing, who shrunk himself to make others comfortable, who gave third, fourth, fifth chances to people who didn't deserve the first one, who believed that being a good person meant being a weak person, who thought vulnerability was strength when it was actually just target practice for predators. That version is dead weight. He's the anchor keeping you from becoming what you need to become. And here's the hard truth most men never swallow. You have to grieve him. You have to mourn the death of who you were because transformation isn't comfortable. It's not some motivational Instagram quote that makes you feel good for 30 seconds. It's violent. It's painful. It's watching yourself in the mirror and not recognizing the eyes staring back because they've gone cold in a way that can't be undone. But that coldness, that's not emptiness, that's clarity. That's what happens when you burn away everything that doesn't serve your survival and advancement, when you strip away the social conditioning, the people-pleasing, the desperate need to be liked by people who don't even respect you. What's left is pure function, pure strategy, pure power. Machiavelli understood that the prince who wants to maintain his position must learn how not to be good. Not because goodness is wrong, but because goodness without power is suicide in a world of wolves. You tried being the sheep. You got slaughtered. Now you become the wolf who remembers what it felt like to be prey, and that memory makes you more dangerous than wolves who were born into power because you know the cost of weakness. You've paid it in full. The old you believed people were inherently good. The new you knows people are inherently self-interested, and you build your strategies around that reality instead of wishing it were different. The old you waited for permission. The new you takes position and dares anyone to question it. The old you sought validation. The new you creates value so undeniable that validation becomes irrelevant. The old you reacted. The new you calculates 3 moves ahead and acts only when the outcome is already secured. This isn't becoming heartless, this is becoming protected. There's a difference, and only men who've been broken understand that difference. Drop this in the comments. The weak me is dead because he is. And what rises from those ashes doesn't ask for mercy, it commands respect. Part 5. The art of strategic invisibility. Here's something the broken and rebuilt understand that the naturally privileged never will. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. Amateur power screams, it flexes, it posts. It needs constant validation and recognition because deep down it's insecure about whether it actually exists. But elite power, strategic power, it moves in absolute silence until the move is already complete and irreversible. You've been broken. You know what it's like to be exposed, to have your vulnerabilities mapped and exploited. So now you do the opposite. You become a closed system. You share nothing that can be used against you. You reveal no dreams that can be poisoned. You show no attachments that can be leveraged. You become a mystery even to people who think they know you. This is where Machiavellian strategy becomes your greatest weapon. Let them underestimate you. Let them think you're still the same person they broke. Let them believe you're harmless, defeated, no longer a threat. While they're comfortable in that delusion, you're 10 moves ahead, building resources they don't see, forming alliances they don't know about, developing skills they have no idea you possess. You become the chess player who never reveals his strategy until checkmate is unavoidable. Here's the technique. You master the performance of acceptable normalcy while your real work happens behind a wall they can't even see. You give people the version of you they expect, pleasant enough, functional enough, forgettable enough, while your actual self operates on a completely different frequency. You learn to speak multiple languages. The language of small talk for those who don't matter. The language of strategic value for those who do. The language of power for the rare few who can handle what you've become. And you never ever confuse these languages or waste elite-level communication on people operating at basic levels. You also master something most people are terrible at: reading rooms, reading hierarchies, reading the invisible power structures in every environment you enter. You identify who actually has influence versus who just has titles. You see who controls resources versus who just controls conversations. You recognize which battles matter and which ones are distractions designed to keep you spinning your wheels while others advance. And most importantly, you disappear from the radar of people who drain you. No dramatic exits, no explanations, no closure conversations that give them one last chance to manipulate you. You just fade from their access so smoothly they don't even realize they've been cut off until they need something and discover you're no longer available. This is the art of the strategic ghost. You're not hiding. You're just no longer wasting visibility on people who don't deserve to witness your elevation. You're not being cold. You're being efficient with your energy, your time, your presence. Because men who've been broken and rebuilt understand something crucial. Your attention is your most valuable resource, and you don't owe it to anyone. Comment this phrase: silent moves, loud results, because that's the signature of someone who's transcended the need for external validation and entered the realm of self-determined power. Part 6. The weaponization of knowledge. Now we enter the phase where everything shifts from defense to offense. You've rebuilt yourself, you've gone silent, you've become strategically invisible. But transformation without application is just philosophy, and philosophy without execution is just entertainment. So here's where you become dangerous in the way that actually matters, through knowledge weaponized into strategic action. When they broke you, they taught you something invaluable, exactly how manipulation works. You've seen it from the receiving end. You know the patterns, the love bombing followed by devaluation, the gaslighting that makes you question your own perception, the intermittent reinforcement that keeps you hoping things will go back to how they were, the triangulation that pits you against others, the projection where they accuse you of exactly what they're doing. You lived through the entire playbook. And here's the Machiavellian truth that separates victims from victors. Once you understand the game, you can never be played the same way again. But more than that, you now possess the ability to see these patterns in real time, in everyone, everywhere. You walk into rooms and immediately identify the manipulators, the narcissists, the users, the takers. You see their moves 3 steps before they make them because you've memorized the dance. They think they're being clever. You're watching them run the same tired script you've already mastered. This is your edge. This is the advantage forged in pain that privileged people will never have. They don't know how predators think because they've never been prey. You know both sides of the equation, and that makes you exponentially more dangerous than someone who only knows one. But knowledge alone isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. So you don't just recognize manipulation, you become immune to it. When someone tries to gaslight you, you don't engage in the argument about reality. You just note that they're willing to lie to your face, categorize them accordingly, and adjust your strategy. When someone tries to make you jealous or create competition for your attention, you recognize the tactic, feel nothing, and withdraw your interest entirely because you don't play in manipulative frameworks anymore. When someone tests your boundaries, you don't explain why the boundary exists or negotiate it. You simply enforce it through immediate consequence, and they learn very quickly that you're not the person they can push around anymore. You also learn to use strategic questions instead of statements. Questions expose people while protecting you. What makes you think that's acceptable? Forces them to defend the indefensible. What do you expect to gain from this conversation? Cuts through manipulation and demands they show their cards. Why would I do that? Said calmly, makes them explain their unreasonable request out loud, where it sounds as absurd as it actually is. These aren't aggressive. They're surgical. They place the burden of justification on the other person while you remain calm, controlled, unmoved. This is verbal judo, using their energy against them while expending almost none of your own. And here's the deeper level. You begin to understand that most people are operating from scripts they've never examined. They're not strategic, they're reactive. They're running programs installed by their wounds, their insecurities, their need for validation. Once you see this, once you truly see that most human behavior is predictable pattern repetition, you stop taking things personally. You stop being emotionally affected by people who are just running their damage on autopilot. You rise above the emotional battlefield entirely and operate from pure strategy. You make decisions based on what serves your goals, not what feels good in the moment. You choose relationships based on mutual value exchange, not emotional addiction. You invest time in people who demonstrate consistent character, not just intense chemistry. Leave this in the comments. I see the game now. Because seeing it, truly seeing how it all works, is the moment you stop being a piece on the board and become the player moving the pieces. Part 7. The philosophy of controlled ruthlessness. Let's address what everyone's thinking but nobody wants to say out loud. Yes, you're becoming ruthless. And no, that's not a character flaw. It's a survival adaptation. But here's the critical distinction that separates Machiavellian power from sociopathic chaos. You're not ruthless for entertainment. You're not cruel for the sake of cruelty. You're strategically ruthless, which means every decision is calculated for maximum efficiency with minimum collateral damage to your long-term position. Controlled ruthlessness is the ability to make hard decisions without drowning in guilt about them afterward. It's cutting people off who are net negative to your life without spending 6 months agonizing over whether you're being fair. It's prioritizing your advancement over other people's comfort without apologizing for your ambition. It's saying no without explaining yourself to people who wouldn't accept any explanation anyway. This is where most men fail. They swing too far in one direction or the other. Either they stay weak, endlessly forgiving, perpetually exploited, or they become chaotically aggressive, burning bridges for ego, making enemies unnecessarily, confusing dominance displays with actual power. Both are failures. Both are emotional reactions instead of strategic positions. The Machiavellian path is different. It's cold mathematics applied to human dynamics. You keep people in your life based on a simple equation. What does this relationship cost me in time, energy, emotional bandwidth, and resources versus what does it return in value, growth, opportunities, and genuine reciprocal support? If the equation is negative, the relationship ends. Not with drama, not with explanations, not with hoping they'll change. It just ends, and you reallocate those resources to higher return investments. This sounds cold because it is cold, but coldness isn't the same as cruelty. Cruelty seeks to harm. Coldness simply refuses to be harmed. There's a massive difference, and men who've been broken understand this instinctively because they've experienced actual cruelty and know they're not replicating it, they're just refusing to be its victim again. You also develop what I call selective empathy. This doesn't mean you become heartless. It means you become strategic about where you invest your emotional energy. You have deep empathy and loyalty for the small circle of people who've proven themselves worthy through consistent action over time. For everyone else, professional courtesy, surface-level pleasantness, but no access to your inner world, your vulnerabilities, your resources, or your time beyond what serves a strategic purpose. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But here's the nuance modern readers miss. He wasn't advocating for being a tyrant. He was saying that if you must choose between being taken advantage of because people love you versus being respected because people fear the consequences of crossing you, choose respect, choose boundaries, choose the version where you're protected. And in practice, what this actually looks like is this. The people in your inner circle love you because you're loyal, generous, and present for those who've earned it. Everyone else fears you, not because you're aggressive, but because they've learned that you're unmovable when it comes to your boundaries, unmanipulatable when it comes to your decisions, and unforgiving when it comes to betrayal. You don't give second chances to people who showed you exactly who they are the first time. You don't negotiate with manipulators. You don't explain yourself to people who've already demonstrated they'll weaponize anything you share. You simply remove access and move forward without looking back. This is controlled ruthlessness. This is strategic elimination of threats and drains. This is how you build an empire. Whether that empire is a business, a life, or just an unshakable sense of self that nobody can ever take from you again. And here's what's beautiful about this approach. The right people aren't scared off by your boundaries. They respect them. They appreciate that you're a man who knows his worth and protects it. The wrong people, they self-select out of your life the moment they realize they can't exploit you, which saves you years of wasted time and energy. Drop this in the comments. Ruthless with purpose. Because purpose is what separates the strategic from the savage, the powerful from the merely violent, the Machiavellian from the merely broken. Part 8. The reconstruction of identity. Here's where we go deeper than tactics and strategy. Here's where we talk about who you actually are now, because the person you were before they broke you, he's gone. And the person you're becoming, he's someone entirely new. Not better, not worse. Just fundamentally different in ways that can't be undone. This is the part nobody talks about in the revenge fantasies and the power podcasts. They talk about winning. They talk about dominating. They talk about showing everyone who doubted you. But they don't talk about the isolation that comes with transformation. They don't talk about looking around and realizing you can't have the same conversations anymore. You can't laugh at the same jokes. You can't tolerate the same surface-level relationships. You've seen too much. You know too much. You've rebuilt yourself at a frequency that most people don't even know exists. And that creates distance. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you're operating in a different reality now. You see the patterns, you see the games, you see the manipulation in conversations that used to seem normal. You see the weakness in behaviors you used to participate in. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to being naive. You can't pretend you don't notice. You can't force yourself to care about things that don't matter when you've been through things that almost destroyed you. This is the loneliness of elevation, and it's real. It's the price you pay for becoming untouchable. Because untouchable doesn't just mean others can't hurt you, it also means they can't reach you. Not really, not at the level where you actually exist now. But here's the reframe that makes this bearable. You're not losing anything real. You're losing illusions. You're losing fake connections that felt like relationships, but were actually just transactional arrangements where you gave more than you got. You're losing people who only liked the version of you that served them. You're losing access to a version of the world that was never actually real. It was just a comfortable lie you believed before reality showed you the truth. And what you gain in exchange? Unshakable self-reliance. The knowledge that you can be broken and still rebuild. The confidence that comes from knowing you don't need anyone to complete you because you've already survived the worst and come out stronger. The clarity of knowing exactly who you are, what you stand for, and what you will and won't tolerate. This is identity reconstruction. This is building yourself from the foundation up with intention, instead of just accepting whatever personality formed through unconscious social conditioning. You decide your values now, not based on what you were taught, not based on what's popular, not based on what gets you liked, based on what's actually true, what actually works, what actually protects you and advances your position. And yes, some of those values will make people uncomfortable. Your boundaries will offend people who benefited from you having none. Your standards will alienate people who can't meet them. Your silence will frustrate people who are used to you explaining yourself. Your absence will anger people who took your presence for granted. Good. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them be offended. Let them be frustrated and angry. Their emotions about your transformation are not your responsibility. You are not obligated to stay small so others can feel comfortable. You are not required to stay broken so they don't have to face what they did to you. You are not responsible for managing the feelings of people who didn't care about yours when they were using you. This is where masculine stoicism becomes your armor. You feel everything: the anger, the grief, the loneliness, the cold satisfaction of becoming powerful, but you process it internally. You use it as fuel. You don't perform it for an audience. You don't need validation for your journey because the results speak louder than any explanation ever could. People will watch you change, and they won't understand it. They'll say you've become cold. They'll say you've changed for the worse. They'll say you're not the person you used to be, and you'll look at them with those new eyes, those cold, clear, calculating eyes, and you'll think, exactly. That was the whole point. Because the person you used to be got destroyed, and the person you are now, he's built to make sure that never happens again. Not through aggression, not through revenge, through strategic positioning so superior that threats can't even get close enough to matter. Through value creation so undeniable that you don't need anyone's permission or approval. Through self-mastery so complete that external chaos can't touch your internal peace. Comment this: I built myself for war because you did, not a war against others, a war against ever being that vulnerable, that exploitable, that breakable again, and in that war, you've already won. Part 9. The Legacy of the Transformed. So what do you do with all this power you've built? What's the end game of becoming untouchable? Because if transformation stops at self-protection, you've only completed half the journey. You've become defended but not dangerous. You've become safe but not significant. And men who've been broken and rebuilt aren't meant for safe, quiet lives. They're meant to build empires that outlast them. Here's the final evolution. You take everything they tried to destroy in you and you weaponize it into creation. You take the pain and turn it into productivity. You take the betrayal and turn it into business acumen. You take the isolation and turn it into focused execution. You take the anger and turn it into unstoppable momentum. Every wound becomes a resource. Every scar becomes a story. Every moment they tried to break you becomes proof that you're unbreakable. This is alchemical transformation, turning the lead of suffering into the gold of achievement. And this is where you separate yourself from everyone who's ever doubted you, used you, or discarded you. Not by talking about it, not by posting about it, not by needing them to see it, by building something so undeniable that it exists, independent of their acknowledgement. You create value in the world, real value. Not just money, though money is a natural byproduct of value creation, but actual contribution that makes you irreplaceable in your domain. You become the person people need, the one they call when it matters, the one whose name carries weight in rooms you're not even in. And you do this not for validation, but because men of power understand that legacy is the only thing that matters. Your feelings are temporary. Your comfort is temporary. Your revenge fantasies are temporary. But what you build, what you create, the systems you establish, the people you elevate who deserve it, the work you produce that outlives you, that's permanent. That's how you win the long game. Machiavelli's actual legacy wasn't his political career. It was his writing. The very system that exiled him and tried to destroy him is forgotten. but his ideas, still shaping how power operates 500 years later. That's the ultimate revenge, not destroying your enemies, outlasting them, building something so significant that generations from now, your name still means something while theirs are dust. And here's what's critical. You don't build this legacy trying to prove anything to the people who broke you. That's still giving them power over your narrative. You build it because you've transcended needing their validation entirely. You've become intrinsically motivated, driven by internal standards so high that external opinions become irrelevant noise. You compete only with yesterday's version of yourself. You measure success only against your own potential. You answer only to the vision you have for what your life can become. This is freedom, real freedom, not the fake freedom of doing whatever you want without consequences, but the mature freedom of becoming so self-directed that other people's judgments can't reach you anymore. And when you operate from this place, when you're building legacy instead of seeking revenge, creating value instead of proving points, focused on your mission instead of your enemies, something interesting happens. You forget about them entirely. The people who broke you become irrelevant. They fade into the background of your story, minor characters in a narrative that became much bigger than they could ever touch. They wanted to be the ending of your story. Instead, they became the catalyst for its greatest chapter. Drop this phrase, "They made me, now watch me build." Because that's the transition from victim to victor, from wounded to warrior, from someone who was broken to someone who breaks limitations and builds empires on the other side of pain. Part 10. The final transmission. So here we are, the end of the transmission. But really, it's just the beginning of your actual work, because everything I've told you is just information until you apply it, just words until you become it, just philosophy until you execute it in the real world where it actually matters. You've got a choice to make right now, and it's the same choice every man who's been broken has to make. Do you stay in the story of what happened to you, or do you become the author of what happens next? Do you keep replaying the betrayal, the pain, the moments they made you feel powerless, or do you take all of that, compress it into fuel, and become something they never saw coming? Most men choose comfort. They choose familiarity. They choose the known pain of staying broken over the unknown challenge of rebuilding. And that's fine. That's their path. But you're still here. You're still listening. Which tells me you're not most men. You're the type who takes the hard road because you know the easy road leads nowhere worth going. You're the type who'd rather be feared and respected than liked and used. You're the type who understands that power isn't given, it's taken through relentless self-development and strategic positioning. So, take it. Take everything I've given you in this monologue and forge it into action. Become the silent operator, become the strategic ghost, become the man who reads the room, controls the frame, and moves 3 steps ahead while everyone else is still reacting to what already happened. Become untouchable, not through aggression, but through excellence. Not through cruelty, but through standards so high that weak people self-eliminate from your life. Not through revenge, but through building something so powerful that your success becomes the only response they'll ever get. And remember this is critical. They don't get to see the transformation. They don't get progress updates. They don't get explanations. They just wake up one day, 5 years from now, and realize you're operating at a level they can't even comprehend. And by then, you won't even remember their names because you'll be too busy building your empire, protecting your peace, and living at a frequency where their existence doesn't register anymore. That's the Machiavellian revenge, not destruction, transcendence. They broke you once. You became the monster they created. But that monster, he doesn't destroy, he builds, he dominates, he wins, not just once, not just against them, but consistently, strategically, permanently. You are the storm they created, and storms don't apologize. They don't explain. They just move with unstoppable force, reshaping everything in their path. Leave one final comment. The transformation is complete. Now, if this resonated with you, If you felt this in your core, hit that like button. Subscribe to Machiavellian Mind because we're just getting started on this journey to untouchable power. And turn on those notifications so you never miss the next transmission. The weak stay broken, the strong rebuild. But the Machiavellian, we become legends. Welcome to the other side.